I'm Naomi Eklund, and I'm here with Jen Dahlberg today. Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Most of you know that Jen works with me at Infinite Yes, and she's helped the company to go into a whole nother level of service. And, she's largely responsible for our ability to create the library and the membership courses. So I want to thank her so much for being here.
Thank you.
So this is Valentine's Day, and I want to say to everybody, whether for you this is Happy Galentine's or Happy Valentine's, or you are doing an anti-Valentine, or whether you just think it's a Hallmark holiday or whatever, I want you to know that this conversation is for everybody. I'm a little bit of a history nerd, and while most holidays have more than one origin story, one of my favorite origin stories for Valentine's Day is that when the prisoners were being held because they were followers of Christ, they were slipped notes of encouragement on their meal trays. And that is really, Saint Valentine was actually a real saint. Mm-hmm. Now, while I may not be a practicing Catholic now, that is how I was grown, that is how I grew up. So that's part of my point of reference. Mm-hmm. So he's an actual saint and was part of the group of people who encouraged those that were in prison for their faith. And so that's why it is the love holiday, because if we think about Christ consciousness, I am not making any commentary on Christianity. That is a personal choice, and that is not mine to comment on. But Christ consciousness is that golden light, that consciousness of love. And we do see Christ consciousness in other cultures, in other places. We see that beautiful golden light coming through. Some might say that you see it with the Buddha. I am not that well versed in world religions to be able to tell you every place that it comes through. So any place you see that golden light, that energy that says you are loved and you're okay and you're safe, and you have a home in whatever you believe, whether it's the afterlife or however you frame that, that is Christ consciousness, when it's coming here to help us to evolve and be better. So that is one history of Valentine's Day, and that's my personal favorite history of Valentine's Day. As many of you know, I have spent most of my life single, which was not really a choice that I wanted to make. I would really love to be in a healthy, loving partnership, and for whatever reasons, that's not the case. So for me, making sure that I'm sending people the message that Valentine's Day is not just for lovers, it is for love. And we all have love, are entitled to love, share love, have friends, have people who care about us. Even if it's just that plant that can't live without you, don't underestimate the need for you as a component of love in this world. So Jen, what would you like to chime in with?
Well, I'm one of those that refers to it as a Hallmark holiday. And I come to that because I'm like you. I feel that Valentine's Day needs to be more about love in general, love in all your healthy connections with others, whether that's pets or friends or family or whoever those people are that show up for you. I am fortunate that I am in a loving romantic relationship and I have a great man by my side. But Valentine's Day always reminds me of how lucky I am to have my girlfriends like you or my besties and my family members that are healthy and my children. But I don't think that Valentine's Day should carry as much weight as it does because you really should love people every day. So I have a hard time, but I love the little notes and I love the opportunity for reminder. And I think that's what I celebrate about the holiday is that it gives people an excuse to maybe reach out where they feel silly doing so other days of the year. Um, but I'd love to get to the place in life where we don't need Hallmark to tell us when to love people. Um, not I'm, as I am an Enneagram type 2, that's like total heart connection thing. I couldn't care about anything more than I care about connecting with others. And to me, that is all kinds of relationships. So I love that we're talking about that. The focus we have on romantic relationships is just not healthy. I think all relationships bring something to us. I love my husband, but he cannot fulfill all the love that I need. I need people like you in my life that, fill these places in my heart. And I just like the opportunity to say so.
I one time heard an older woman say that a woman needs 5 men in her life. They all had various tasks, and then she needs her girlfriends.
Hmm.
Um, so I agree with you in this idea that sharing with people that we care about is really important and profound, and Valentine's Day can be a great reminder for that.
Hmm.
Um, I do have my window open, so if you hear any traffic noise, that's totally on me, and I'm not closing it because it's a beautiful
Yeah,
day.
enjoy that.
But we've all heard traffic before, so just let it be in the background. So there's a couple of things that we can talk about. One of those is self-love, which is a huge topic. But before we do that, I want to address a couple of things. One is grief. A lot of us have people that we love that are gone.
Mhm.
And that might mean that they're gone, traveling abroad or married to someone else, or that relationship didn't work, or that they're no longer physically with us.
Mhm.
And things like Valentine's Day can bring up grief
Yes.
because, I have more than one text already today for, emergency conversations. Um, because when you have something that close and then it isn't there,
Mhm.
most of the time it we never really quite process. Let me say that differently. A lot of people don't quite process to the point where they can have that memory and feel love and feel grateful for the memory, but not feel the pain.
Mhm.
And there are processes for that. And that's why we use things like mindset. And that's why we use things like meditation. So we can get to a place of understanding our triggers. Sometimes we feel like, well, maybe it's our fault. We did something wrong. Or maybe woulda, coulda, shoulda. There's so much that we don't control.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I want to say this. Now, I am never encouraging toxic relationships, but just because a relationship with somebody is toxic for you, or that person is not a healthy person, doesn't mean that you don't love them.
It's very true.
You can still love somebody who isn't good for you.
Mhm.
You can love somebody and that relationship is not working, it's not healthy. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that loving somebody is not a cornerstone for a good relationship.
Mhm.
If you both put energy into the relationship, then that love can blossom. The work of the relationship is the gardening of the love. And you can't garden love by yourself,
No.
because that's a two-person, whether it's friends or a romantic relationship or whatever. So I think that it's really important that we acknowledge the people we love that we cannot be in relationships with,
Mhm.
because when we deny ourselves that expression of love, at least for me, it hurts.
Yeah.
I have a number of people who I wish I could still be in relationship with. I have a number of people who I still actually love, but I can't be in relationship with because we're not good
Mhm.
together.
Mhm.
So on a day like this is a day where I might take a moment. Now I do this fairly regularly, like you said, but I might take a moment and send that person a good thought or a good wish or a goodwill. Because when we love somebody, but we get into this battle with them and we have to cut them off and do all of these things, what ends up happening is we end up hurting, and
Mhm.
that hurt doesn't resolve. Again, I go back to why you do a mindset class, why you do healings and clearings and meditations. All of this work that we do is to move that pain.
Mhm.
So I just kind of want to make a little space for people for that, because that is real,
Mhm.
you know? Um, so just breathe into the memory of love, send them some good thoughts, send them some good energy, or at least send yourself a little bit of compassion because you love somebody that you can't be with.
Mhm.
But try to do your best to turn that pain into something that isn't painful.
Agreed. I agree with that. I think one of the things that I see in relationships that aren't meant to be together is people take sort of like a polar view of that. Like, oh, I'm not supposed to be with that person, therefore that person is bad. Just because somebody is not meant to be your person doesn't mean they're bad. It just means you're not bringing out the best in each other. And I love that, what you just said about having compassion for yourself in that, because I think a lot of times what we do is if someone chemically brings out something in us that's not the best version of us, we get so upset with ourselves. And it's like, it's a biological response. Like, you can't, that trigger is being triggered. Yes, maybe you can do some work on that and change that trigger a little bit, but that doesn't mean that you're bad or they're bad. It just means you're not good together, and you could be good in a different situation. Um, and wish each other well and not be in relationship. So
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned that. That's fantastic.
Yes. And sometimes, and depending on the relationship, you have to wish them all from afar.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of
I'm,
boundaries.
I'm encouraging no one to text their toxic ex. But
No, no.
acknowledge that there's a part of you that you would like to send some loving energy to. Maybe you want to, whatever you're, maybe light a candle for them, maybe send a prayer to them, maybe do nothing for them and do something for yourself.
Yeah.
But acknowledge that we want to move that energy and not just keep it tied up in a box. I
Mhm.
think when we talk about healing, one of the biggest challenges is like we keep stuff like locked up in these boxes.
Mhm.
And that isn't healthy and that isn't healing. And that's like yesterday I started talking about our shadow. It's like the shadow side of love is really scary.
It is.
The shadow side is really terrifying. And we're also there's a show on Netflix called You that I've recently started watching, and I don't know if you've seen it. Without doing any spoiler alerts, um, I think that the main character shows us what trauma does to a person when all they really want to do is be loved,
Mhm.
and how trauma, which we can't see and many people know
Yeah.
how to hide,
Mhm.
um, how trauma and the shadow that it lives in, because there's so much shame around not being loved, how that changes the way a person functions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you just alerted me the other day to some information about the frequency of different things in the vibrations in you, and shame is the lowest frequency. And that really struck me because shame is such a common experience that we feel around love.
Yes, and that the person who I first read that work, and the chart that I sent you was from a man named Hawkins, and it's in a book called Power versus Force,
Mhm.
which I will talk about in another, and we can talk about in another video, because it's really powerful. It's really powerful when we understand that our emotions have a frequency and we get
Mhm.
stuck in those frequencies. And I want to go back to, it's not your fault. if you weren't taught how to love, if you were traumatized, if you had things happen to you, it is very normal for a child to take on that responsibility and feel shame or guilt or think they should have, could have, would have done something differently. It doesn't mean it's your fault,
Mm-mm.
but you still have the power to do something about it. You have the power to not stuff it.
Yes.
Because, you know, we all know at this point that stuffing our emotions is really dangerous. So how do we unstuff it? Well, we use our meditations. This is one of the things I love about the Enneagram, because the Enneagram helps us to look for clues about our higher and lower functionality,
Yeah.
you know, and it also helps us to understand our gut responses. And, you know, the human mind is very interesting, because the human mind is designed to use as little energy as possible. Like our whole survival model is use as little energy as possible. And then our heart wants to go connect. And then our soul or our spirit or our consciousness wants to move and learn and grow. And then our body needs exercise. So we have seemingly conflicting sources inside of us. And one of the things about the Enneagram is it helps you to see things that you haven't seen before because they're so innate. You know, I'm a body type, I'm a type 8. And so there's so many things that are just inherent that you don't even see until you read it in a book and you go, oh my God, that's me.
Yeah, very much so. I think that what I love, I'm so grateful to you for introducing me to the Enneagram and encouraging me to dive deep into it. What I love about the study of the Enneagram is it does highlight to you the things about your personality and the way you interact with the world, with yourself, like breathing. If you think about it, you don't think about your breathing. You don't think about how you're breathing unless you are consciously doing a meditation or a breathing exercise. When you're just running around through your day, you don't think about making your heart beat. You don't think about how you're breathing, how you're taking in oxygen and letting out carbon dioxide. You don't think about these things. And the same thing happens in our personalities. You literally are interacting with other people in a completely unconscious way, and you don't even know you're doing it or how it's being perceived by others. And in studying the Enneagram, you start to recognize yourself, both the good and the bad, you know, and understanding that it doesn't need to have the assignment of good or bad. It's literally not a judgment. It's just you are. And I love that you can like shift something that maybe you're doing that's a little unhealthy for you because you become aware of it, and you can choose a little healthier version of that and just make a slight subtle adjustment and improvement, and it actually affects all of your relationships in a healthy way.
Absolutely.
Absolutely amazing. The best tool I've ever discovered for connecting with others.
Well, and that said exactly like a 2, because you're right. It's just not.
Well, I mean, that's the first thing I did was have everyone I love take the test so I could understand how to connect to them better. You know?
Very 2 of you.
Yes, I can't.
And you know, as an 8, one of the things, and I'm an 8, I've come through a lot of trauma in my life. So I had a lot of anger. So much so that when somebody told me I was angry, I was like, because I'm not angry.
Which is what all of the people who are angry say.
I'm not angry.
Yeah, when you're like, why are you so angry? I'm not. Well, you sound it. Yeah.
Well, so understanding, like understanding that the anger actually was serving a purpose.
Yeah.
You know, the anger was serving my tenderness, and the anger was hiding my pain. The anger was because something wasn't right. I wasn't treated right. I wasn't being treated right. I didn't know how to establish situations where I was treated right. So yeah, I'm angry because things aren't right.
Yeah.
And making friends with those emotional states. You know, so part of, here we're going to go into self-love. So part of the idea of self-love is to not fear yourself.
Yeah.
to not fear your passion and your triggers, to not fear the things that are hidden in the basement, to not fear your strength, to not fear your power, to not fear loving again because you're going to get your heart broken, because these hearts break.
Mhm. And they
That's
mend.
that's how they are. These hearts break.
Mm-hmm. What's
I
that
wish,
Japanese art form where they glue the vase back together with gold?
yes. I don't say
That's
it
a heart.
perfectly, but my son does it beautifully. It starts with a K.
Kintsugi or something like that.
So I
Yeah,
think,
so beautiful.
yes.
Hmm.
It is. It is. It's very beautiful. Um, maybe that's why Christ was shown with a golden heart, because humanity broke his heart open so many times.
Yeah, wow. I've never thought of that. That's fantastic.
Or maybe that's why Buddha has this golden crown, because his brain was broken a million times by human thought. He just sort of put the gold
Kintsugi
glue
it back
back together.
together. Yeah. Hmm.
you know, um, that is the thing, is that we avoid pain, but pain is unavoidable. We want love, but we don't want to be vulnerable. And when we talk about self-love, I want to avoid being cliche. um we have this great song by Miley Cyrus right now saying, I can buy myself flowers and I can do all of these things for myself, and that's really wonderful. I've been single for almost twice as long as she's been alive.
Yeah.
Almost, not quite. 1.5 times. But the point is that, yeah, I bought myself flowers, but it's really nice when somebody else buys them. And I've written a lot of checks. Mostly I've written my name not in sand on checks.
Mhm.
And I do talk to myself. So I do all of those things she's talking about. I know a lot of us do. And I know some of us have gotten to a point where we're completely satisfied. And if you don't want to change that, don't. But I also know a lot of people, if they could find that person, would. A lot
Yeah.
of people would take those risks. But right now, the world is, there's so many places where things feel unstable and scary and threatening, that a lot of times, like, taking that, like, one extra straw of risk and letting somebody into your house or into your life, or it feels like too much.
Mhm.
And I think the power of self-love is recognizing that you can provide the safety for yourself.
Yeah.
You can provide a safe home, you can provide your clothing, you can provide your food. Some people believe that that comes from a divine source.
Mhm.
I believe that there's a collaboration with a divine source, and people have different names for that. I think that part of the challenge that we're facing is that there was, for a very long time, very clearly defined roles about who did what.
Mhm.
And some people would say, well, that wasn't love, but I would also counterpoint that argument, where if you clearly know what your rules are, and what your roles are, and you don't have to think about who you are and what you want as a person, it's much easier to relax, because you're safe, and there's a compromise, and there's always a compromise in life. Doesn't matter what you're doing, there's always a compromise. Maybe some of these 50, 60, 80-year marriages are because they had clear and defined roles.
Mhm.
you
Well, if you
know
think about it, a lot of parenting advice is, kids like to have rules. They like boundaries. They like to know where their limits are. If it's true for children, why isn't it true for adults? Because we're humans, all right? Like we all do like knowing where do we fit.
yeah, yeah,
We
we do.
do. I mean, we're constantly on a quest for that. Where do I fit in? Where am I set aside? Where, like we all want to know, where are the rules? How fast do I need to drive on this road? Where would I get a ticket? Right? Like we have all these little sayings like, under 9 and you're fine, or, whatever, so that we give ourselves all these rules and parameters, even in our own self choices. So of course we would like to know what they are in a relationship,
Yeah,
whether it's a friendship or a romantic or parenting with your children. what it doesn't matter. We all want to know what's expected of me. Can I meet those expectations? What do I have I find it really interesting how your expectations can change with labels. So you see this all the time in long-term relationships, that suddenly they decide to get married and now the relationship is terrible when it was wonderful before, because they were girlfriend and boyfriend, and the relationship of girlfriend and boyfriend is different than wife and husband in their head.
I sometimes think that if my husband and I had not gotten married, we might have lasted a lot longer.
Mm-hmm. Because people shift with their labels, right? So that again, it comes back to, we like knowing what our role is because we have expectations. That's why you're supposed to have conversations with people about your words, like what does that label mean to you, in your relationships with other people.
Which ties back to the energy and the power versus force. There's power in our words. There's power in our conveyance. There's power in our agreements.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of don't care what agreements two adults makes, as long as they both honor that agreement.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, together. Honor your word, honor what you say. If you don't want to honor it, renegotiate it.
Yeah.
I think that when you're in a relationship where there is a level of emotional and mental security, then you can evolve within the context of that relationship. And that relationship includes your relationship with yourself and your friends.
Yes.
A lot of the times people don't grow out of their current identity because they don't want to lose the people they love.
Mm-hmm.
It's extremely
I see that a lot.
It's extremely common.
Mm-hmm.
But you can love those people. If you have a secure foundation in those friendships, you can still love those people and you can change.
Mm-hmm.
If you change in those people and you don't have a relationship, then it was either time for it to change or it was based on something that wasn't real. And that includes your relationship with yourself. You have to be safe with yourself. You have to be safe with your darkness. You have to be safe learning to put yourself in proper place. You have to be safe in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us don't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where we run into trouble, is we maybe don't feel safe in a relationship, and maybe together or individually, we don't know how to make that place safe. So then we get divorced or we get single, and then we end up in this situation where, unless we do our healing work, unless we look at our shadow and we see the patterns. Now, did we create these patterns? I am not a subscriber to, we come in here with a predestined contract. That does not make sense to me. There are too many people suffering too gravely in this world for me to believe that 70% of the people on the planet chose to come into starvation and war and all these other things that most people have to deal with. I can't do that. I can't even imagine a loving parental figure, creator, doing that to us.
Yeah.
But we come into a set of circumstances. I do think there are things that we're here to learn. I do think we're here to grow, but I don't necessarily think that we're here to suffer. But what happens is, because of the way the human psyche is made, is we think we're responsible for the suffering, just like we think we have to please those people, our human gods, our human overlords, to make them happy. With there's all this confusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
it all starts when we're children, and anytime you do anything that makes your parents upset, you're bad.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that self-love, now don't get me wrong, I love a good massage, a good facial,
Mm-hmm.
love all of that pampering. I think that actual self-love is looking inside of yourself and recognizing that the identity you built was the identity that a child built for you to figure out how to manage in the world. And if you want a different life, you have to embrace and love that child and mature your identity in the world. So I think that that's truly the most loving thing you can do, because it reduces your need to suffer and it helps you get rid of those triggers. So in the chaotic world that we live in, you can navigate more easily.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Well, and without truly accepting who you are, you can't truly accept other people either, or allow others to truly accept you. So, I recently had someone say they wanted to be authentically loved, and I said, "Well, do you know who you authentically are?" And they were like, "Oh, goodness." That is a hard one for all of us. And if you don't learn to authentically look at yourself and accept that for who you are, none of us are perfect. None of us. We're not designed to be perfect.
and very, very, very few of us are who we are told that we should be.
No. And we're not supposed to be. And it can be a lot of unpacking as an adult to try to figure out, well, who am I? And we got all of this media input telling us who we're supposed to be, and I'm fighting against that all the time myself. I know better and I still fight against it. But until you figure out more closely who you are and accept it for yourself, you can't let anyone else accept you either. Because when they say, I love you, then you start battling with that. No, you don't, because you don't know this thing about me.
I agree with that for the most part. I think there are times when we can help heal each other.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you have to have that room for healing in relationships.
I mean, I do think that sometimes, like, my son made me accept that I was a lovable person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he won't let me get away with it.
Yeah.
If I don't.
Yeah.
So I think we don't do this in silos.
Yeah. It's
And
in community.
Yes, I think that that's part of why I started Infinite. Yes, that's part of why we have the membership site and we're building community and all of those things, is because we don't do this in a silo. And you can't do this in a silo, because if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we need food, water, air, shelter, breath. Then we need love, tribe, community, self-assured, like all of these things. So for us to even get up above being able to be self-aware and start actualizing thinking, you need people in that tribe, in that community that lift you up. Yes. Because if your food, shelter, community needs are not being met, you're going to keep going back down. Just like when you talk about from the emotional chart, you can get up here to some of the higher emotions, love, joy. Most people don't feel a lot of love, joy, happiness, great stuff without having someone to share it with.
Yes, absolutely. Well, if you think about what was that popular thing about it takes a village to raise your children. It takes a village to feel love for yourself. You have to have your community. You get to be picky about who's in it. Let's be clear on that. You don't have to just let anybody in your village. You get to pick your village, which is nice because you can get rid of the village idiot, right? So
I don't know. The village idiot might not be the mean person. They might be funny.
True. But you get to pick who your village is. That's what I love about it.
I want the mean people to go away.
No.
Mean people can all go on that island out there.
Yeah.
There's fish that need food. Go.
Yeah.
Go
maybe
be useful.
Bring back our
yeah.
But I mean, I'm a huge fan of community. I'm a tribal person. I believe in I create the people around me are my tribe. I pull, I'm picky about it now. When I was younger, I just wanted anyone to love me. I came from a traumatic background where I didn't feel loved. And I literally would, the minute you said hi to me, I'd cling on to you like you're my new person, right? And I didn't necessarily know how to pick good people. But to be fair, I didn't know I was picking people that were just reaffirming that I wasn't worth loving. I had to reframe that. And so once I got better at, oh, hey, this person actually is showing me love, and I just have to learn to accept it. That was really hard for me to let people love me. Now I'm picky about my tribe, and that gives me more space to be compassionate to people who I don't want in my tribe, but they're lovely. They can be over there. Lovely to sit with you in a restaurant, but you're still not in my tribe. My tribe, I get to pick. So, but you can't, like you said, you cannot reach that love and that joy and that higher vibration in your world without allowing people to love you and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and love them.
And this is one of the things that makes me really excited about having tools.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you got to study with Dr. Wagner, and you got certified at multiple levels with him with the Enneagram. I've been studying it for 24 years. Mm-hmm. So the Enneagram is a fabulous tool. One of the old school things that I still have that I think we've recreated somewhere is the levels of functionality inside of the Enneagram. I can't find that chart anywhere else. But sometimes the old school, simple, straightforward things are the best, at least for my brain. Because like if I can see something in a chart, I can correlate that data a lot more quickly. So you can correlate, and in my book, and my son did the graphics for my book. I'm really proud of him. He did these beautiful graphics that help you to quickly see, are you functioning above the line or below the line? Are you functioning at neutral? And if you're functioning at neutral, then we have these list of tools and meditations. And Jen did these really cool affirmations that we just released. That was so cool. Things to help you get yourself above the line. This is where self-awareness matters. So if you take that really good information, am I functioning above the line or below the line? How am I treating this person? Am I treating this person from a place of inner security? Am I thriving, or am I treating this person like they're a threat to my survival? Yeah. Are we going like this, or are we going like this? And how am I contributing? Right. Because, we all want to do our best to keep our relationships above the line. And then when we do our personal work, we go into our shadow, we do our own below the line work. Everybody has below the line work. Yeah. But we don't want to pull other people into it unless there's a conscious agreement, because that's where we end up hurting people. So then we have these great Enneagram tools. Okay, so then we have the mindset tools, which you're like the mindset guru, genius girl.
Mindset saves my life, so it's a matter of survival.
I love the way that you talk about it. A lot of people talk about it in this sort of like, magical thinking way. And magical thinking has its place in our creation and our understanding of life. However, when you're really dealing with sort of deeply rooted psychological things and trauma, magical thinking can actually enhance the trauma, can enhance the trigger. So I think that this is one of those things why you need a coach, why you want to think about where things are, like why you want to understand what works where. Magical thinking is great when you're in a mindset group, when you're working together. I knew a lady who had some very deep trauma, and she had this picture of a Mercedes on her fridge because she was working with this sort of magical thinking. She wasn't dealing with her trauma. And I knew her for a long time, and she had this picture of this Mercedes on her fridge. The longer she had the picture of that Mercedes on her fridge, the more and more desperate her financial situation got. Yeah. To the point where she lost her home, and she still kept that Mercedes picture up. The reason being is that when you say to the universe, I want a Mercedes, but everything inside of you is being triggered by that, the triggers have to be cleared up. Yes. Which is why if we're going to take magical thinking, we have to have tools like mindset, the Enneagram, Stephen Hawking or Dr. Hawking's work, which is power versus force, the Maslow's. We have to have touchstones and benchmarks. Like if I want X, but I'm not getting it, what is the trauma What
Mhm.
is the thing that's stopping me? And that it needs to be healed. It's not a shame thing to be ashamed of. It's not something that you just try to keep blowing up the boulder, because if you don't heal the boulder, then you just keep falling over it. So this is why I love all the tools, because people forget that we are super complex.
Yes.
You know, like the brain wants everything to be super easy. Like, hey, go from A to B, and there's a cookie. Oh, that reminds me, it is Girl Scout cookie time. Um,
Another thing to love.
sorry, Valentine's Day and Girl Scout cookies kind of go together. But you see my point. It's like you have to have tools, and we forget that we are complex, and we forget that we need tools, because we just, like, it's kind of like one of the problems with our education system. We're supposed to know, not learn.
Yeah.
No, you're supposed to learn.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay not to know. We're on a learning journey here. This
Mm-hmm.
whole thing is a learning journey.
Well, and you just triggered something in me about so many people will say, well, I don't need to do that kind of work because I could just, I should just be fine the way that I am. How? How are you fine the way you are? Who taught you to be fine, right? Like, I'm going to guess that you came from a system, whether some people are really fortunate and have a really healthy family system. Most of us don't. But you come from some sort of system, whether it's an educational system or a religious background system or a cultural, there is something in that system that's keeping you from knowing everything you need to know. So unless you embark on a personal growth journey of whatever kind for yourself, you won't learn all the things you're supposed to know. So what I love about the way that we do things is giving different tools, different options, different paths to whatever it is you're going for. My goals and your goals are very, very different. And we use the tools in very different ways.
Yes.
And some of the tools that I really love, you're like, ugh, that's annoying as hell. And I'm like, yeah, but it works really, really well for me. It gets me where I need to go. And that's what I love about what we bring, this balance that we bring, because there is no right one path to anything. It's what works for you.
And I want to address something in self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Too many children are taught to hush, that their questions mean they don't have faith, that their questions are challenging or bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we live in a country with a lot of people who are Christian. There's nothing wrong with being Christian. I think that if you're truly looking at the teachings of Christ, it can be a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at the examples of Christ, it can be a wonderful thing. And what does Christ do when he's 12 years old? He goes into the temple and he challenges the adults.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we do to our teenagers when they challenge our ideas? Our teenagers are supposed to challenge our ideas. That is what Christ modeled.
Mm-hmm.
Christ modeled being accountable to the children for how you are teaching them and raising them.
Mm-hmm.
How are we loving our children in a system where they're supposed to be married off or shut up or do this or don't do that? Just follow the rules. Now, at no point was Jesus disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
He was very respectful of his mother and father.
Well, I don't think a child gets disrespectful unless they're dismissed as if they don't matter.
And then they feel like they aren't loved. And this is like where a lot of families start to break down.
Mm-hmm.
It is a teenager's job to challenge you.
I would say it's a child's job from the word go. My favorite story to tell about my oldest son, who is going to be 25 next week, is when he was 4. He wanted me to get him some villains for Star Wars. He had all the action figures that were the heroes, but he had no villains. And I was in this mindset at that time where I just didn't want any evil in my house. And I said, oh no, honey, we don't want to have bad guys in the house. And my 4-year-old son looked me square in the face and he said, "But mom, Luke Skywalker can't fight Han Solo." And I was like, "Oh man, put your shoes on." And we went to the store and we bought all of the villains because he was right. Good can't battle evil if it's not there. So, if I had stuck to my guns, like, and not listened to the wisdom coming out of the 4-year-old, you have to be humble and let somebody question. If you can't let someone question, then you don't believe strongly in whatever it is you think you believe in.
I agree. I know one of the things that made me really want to leave the church was when I was, I think I was a freshman in high school. Yeah, I was a freshman. And I was asking lots of questions like I was supposed to,
Mhm.
because I love God, the divine, like with all of my heart and soul. You've seen me. This is like, I love this more than anything.
Mhm.
And I was scolded for asking too many questions and not having enough faith.
Mhm.
And I remember my response to this day was, my God can handle my questions.
I have said that so many times in my life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why would we teach children that God is afraid of questions?
Mhm.
When this Buddha is all questions. And please forgive me, there are so many religions that I am not educated on. So if you want to leave comments that are helpful about understanding different religions' points of view, I'm welcome and I'm open to that. I know that I don't know
Mhm.
so much. My experience of people who are Jewish is that they have a very open relationship with God and they allow themselves to ask God questions.
Mhm. I don't think that questioning something is a lack of faith in it. I think it's an opportunity to reaffirm your faith.
If you don't love it, why would you question it?
Mhm.
So, how does this all fit into love? I think loving ourselves means taking a look at the way we were raised and our parents' perhaps lack of wisdom,
Mhm.
or perhaps our parents' lack of challenge of things that they just accepted.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes self-love means that we can look at our parents and this is part of that thing where I was saying where we bring that child up.
Mhm.
We bring our inner child up and we say, we're adults now.
Mhm.
And I love you and I hold you and I thank you and I see all of these things and we all know that our parents program us. So I see how I'm programmed and I
Mhm.
can be compassionate with myself for being programmed that way and still bring myself through the developmental phases of questioning and looking and accepting and sort of in some ways, I think all of us get to parent ourselves.
Yes.
One of the most helpful books for me was a book on self-parenting a very long time ago. So I think that idea of we're finished products takes us out of compassion.
Mhm. How
Because
can you ever be finished?
but we're supposed to be. We're supposed to know. We're supposed to be at some point where we have these answers.
Mm.
So
I think the best answers come from the quest. I'm always evolving my answers. Every year when I level up, I learn a new cheat code. And I still haven't gotten to the end of the quest. So I think that if you ever get to the end, then it's time to leave the planet, right? And I'm just not ready for that.
I've heard this from a number of different people, and whoever said it and repeated it, thank you. When you don't have a to-do list anymore, there's no reason to stay alive.
It's true.
And I plan on dying with a very long to-do list,
Mhm.
but staying continuously embodied as long as I can.
One of the things that you said yesterday in a live that you did, you talked about people at the end of their lives, they never look back and say, gee, I wish I watched more TV. They always say things like, I wish I spent more time with the people that I love. So I think on Valentine's Day, what a wonderful example of, yeah, remind yourself, like put that on your to-do list. You know, make sure that you're carving out time for the people that you love, all of the people that you love, you know, not just the romantic relationship. It's not about roses and chocolate candy. It's about connecting with people, and it's about letting them know that they matter to you.
Which wraps up perfectly the whole idea of St. Valentine's Day is about uplifting each other and ourselves.
Yeah.
Thank you all so very much for your time. Check out some of our other videos, go to our website, all that great stuff. Please remember to like, subscribe, share. Have a fabulous day, and we will talk again soon. Thanks.